The Israeli military says one of its soldiers was moderately wounded by gunfire in central Gaza earlier on Wednesday. The army has not detailed exactly how the shooting happened or who fired the rounds, and it says an investigation is underway to determine whether it came from direct combat, friendly fire, or another incident on the ground. While that inquiry unfolds in Gaza, the pressure on Israel's northern front is rising again, with Hezbollah claiming it has struck 13 towns in northern Israel. Sirens have sounded across parts of the Galilee for an extended period as rocket alerts rippled through border communities. Israeli officials have not reported immediate casualties from the latest barrage, but the military warned that the pace and scale of attacks could intensify in the coming hours. The flare-up comes as an unusually public diplomatic channel is being tested in Washington. Direct, high-level talks between Israel and Lebanon, brokered by the United States and hosted by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. It is the first direct engagement of this kind between the two sides in decades, and it is taking place against a backdrop of active fighting and widening displacement in Lebanon's south. Lebanon's position in the talks has been framed around an urgent ceasefire and a pathway to stabilize the border. Israel's focus, by contrast, is on security guarantees that would push Hezbollah away from the frontier and ultimately strip the group of the ability to threaten northern Israel with rockets, anti-tank fire, and cross-border raids. Those objectives are colliding not only in conference rooms but on the ground, where Israel has been expanding military operations in southern Lebanon. Over recent days, Israeli forces have pushed deeper in what Israeli officials describe as an effort to establish a buffer zone, an area intended to reduce the risk of rocket fire and infiltration by driving Hezbollah fighters and weapons farther north. From Israel's perspective, the strategy is tied directly to the question of whether residents of the north can return home after repeated evacuations, prolonged rocket alerts, and months of instability. Israeli leaders say the goal is not a limited tactical move, but a sustained change in the security equation along the border. In remarks issued during the latest phase of operations, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described the aim as a wider, deeper security belt rather than a narrow adjustment of disputed points. We've pushed the enemy away from the border, and we're not talking about just 5 points, he said. We're talking now about a solid, much deeper security zone, which also prevents the danger of invasion and also pushes away the anti-tank threat. He added that Israeli forces were dismantling what he called militant infrastructure close to the frontier. They are also dealing with the terror villages that were right next to our border. They are simply being flattened, he said. Net. Netanyahu insisted the campaign would continue until the north could be secured. We will not rest until their security is fully restored, he said, and he emphasized that the fighting remains active. Asterisk, the fighting continues. It has not stopped. It is ongoing all the time. Asterisk, push has been particularly intense around the strategically important town of Bint Jbeil, a hilly area overlooking the UN demarcated blue line that separates Lebanon and Israel. The town carries heavy symbolism in Hezbollah's narrative. It is associated with past declarations of resistance and with claims of victory after Israel's withdrawal from southern Lebanon in 2000. Israeli forces have been seeking to tighten control around Bint Jbeil, while Hezbollah fighters have responded with rockets and artillery, aiming to slow or reverse Israel's advance. The battle has been described by observers as some of the fiercest of the current war, with heavy fire traded across the surrounding ridgelines and Vil. Lages, Israel announced that one of its reservists was killed during the fighting in southern Lebanon. The military identified him as Sergeant Major Res Ayal Uriel Bianco, 30, a fire truck driver who served with the 180th Brigade and was from Katzrin. Israeli outlets reported that other reservists were wounded in the same incident, including at least one moderately. The death underscores the risks of the ground campaign, even as Israel argues that a buffer zone is necessary to change Hezbollah's operational freedom near the border. The Israeli military have repeatedly said it will keep striking Hezbollah launch sites, weapons depots, and command positions, and that its troops will keep moving to dismantle what it calls entrenched militant posts embedded in civilian areas. Lebanon, however, is bracing under the mounting toll. Lebanese health authorities have reported more than 2,000 people killed since the war expanded, including large numbers of civilians, among them women and children, as well as medical workers. The destruction and displacement have been sweeping. More than 1 million people have been forced from their homes, according to multiple humanitarian assessments, with families moving north or crowding into temporary shelters, schools, and relatives' apartments. Among the dead are emergency responders, including paramedics and ambulance crews, who say they have been operating under near constant danger as strikes hit roads, homes, and the edges of towns where people rush to dig out survivors. One funeral highlighted the risks faced by medical teams. Colleagues mourned a medic named Hassan Badawi, killed in a drone strike as he arrived to help at the scene of an earlier attack. Those around him described a moment of routine life-saving work turning instantly fatal. An ambulance stopping, a stretcher being pulled out, and then the strike. The United Nations has repeatedly called for de-escalation and for both sides to use diplomatic channels to halt the fighting. UN officials have also pointed to the unfinished work of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, the framework that ended the 2006 Israel-Hezbollah war and set out commitments on armed presence in southern Lebanon, the role of the Lebanese state, and the mandate for UN peacekeeping support. In a statement emphasizing diplomacy, a UN spokesperson urged both sides to use every available channel to end hostilities and address the obligations under 1701. We encourage both Lebanon and Israel to leverage all available diplomatic avenues at their disposal to immediately end hostilities and address outstanding provisions under Security Council Resolution 1701, he said. He added, we stand ready to work with the parties to facilitate efforts in that regard. The UN's political mission in Lebanon, led by Special Coordinator Jean-Ian Hennis-Plasschaert, has been engaged in quiet diplomacy, pressing for steps that could reduce the chance of miscalculation and open a path to a durable ceasefire. At the same time, UNIFIL, the UN interim force in Lebanon, has continued patrols and coordination efforts in the south, even as its freedom of movement has been increasingly challenged. UN peacekeepers say they have observed rocket fire toward Israel and airstrikes in their area of operations, including around communities such as Shama and the sector west of Bint Jbeil. They have also reported incidents involving obstruction and intimidation. On Wednesday, UN officials said Israeli forces tried to block the passage of a UN convoy before allowing it to proceed after several minutes. The UN also reported warning shots fired over a UNIFIL position at Aitarun. Those reports follow earlier incidents in which UNIFIL vehicles were rammed near Shama, raising fresh concerns about the safety of peacekeepers operating amid the fighting. The UN has reiterated that all parties are obligated under international law to protect UN personnel and facilities and to respect the Ms. Sion's work. The political tension is widening inside Lebanon as well. Hezbollah, an armed movement and political party backed by Iran, has been signaling deep hostility to any diplomatic track it does not control. As Washington hosted the meeting between Israeli and Lebanese envoys, Hezbollah figures urged Lebanon's government to pull back from the talks, warning that negotiations could be used to pressure Lebanon into concessions, including steps toward disarmament. That, however, is one of Israel's central demands, limiting Hezbollah's rocket force and removing its armed presence from the border region. Israeli officials argue that without dismantling Hezbollah's military capacity, any ceasefire would be temporary, leaving northern Israel exposed to renewed barrages and future escalation. The U.S. brokered talks aim to test whether a direct channel can produce at least an interim pause in hostilities, while laying out a longer horizon for border security, U.S. officials have described the negotiations as rare and significant, while also cautioning that a breakthrough is not likely immediately. The session in Washington brought together senior diplomats, the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Yichio Leiter, and Lebanon's ambassador, Nada Hamadeh Moad, along with U.S. officials, including Ambassador to Lebanon Michelle Issa and State Department Counselor Michael Needham, under the leadership of Secretary Rubio. The meeting's timing is especially delicate because it comes amid a broader regional shockwave, the war that erupted after U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran, followed by a temporary truce that, rather than settling the region, left multiple theaters still simmering along the Israel-Lebanon border. The war has accelerated in recent weeks, with ground fighting intensifying and airstrikes expanding across southern Lebanon. Israel argues that the northern battle cannot be separated from the southern one in Gaza. Officials in Jerusalem say Israel still faces threats from Hamas and other militant factions, even as it shifts manpower and resources to the north. The military has framed this as a multi-front conflict requiring sustained operations and constant readiness. In Gaza, that reality is reflected in ongoing incidents such as Wednesday's shooting of an Israeli soldier in central Gaza, an event that, while described as moderate injury, highlights the continuing friction and the persistent danger faced by forces operating in dense, contested terrain. In the north, communities on both sides of the border remain on edge. In Israel, repeated sirens and rocket warnings continue to disrupt daily life, sending families to shelters and keeping schools and businesses under intermittent closure. In Lebanon, the humanitarian impact is far more expansive across territory. Wide areas have been battered by airstrikes and artillery. Roads are damaged and health facilities struggle to operate under shortages and insecurity. Against this backdrop, rope Washington's talks are being watched as a test of whether diplomacy can run alongside war or whether battlefield dynamics will overwhelm the negotiating table. For Lebanon, an immediate ceasefire is seen by many officials as the only way to stem displacement and prevent further destruction of southern towns. For Israel, a ceasefire without concrete security changes is seen as a pause that could simply allow Hezbollah to rearm and reposition. The gap is enormous, and the situation on the ground is volatile enough that even a single incident can spiral. Hezbollah's stated strikes on northern Israeli towns, the Israeli military's warnings of further incoming attacks, and Israel's expanding ground push in southern Lebanon all add to the risk that the conflict could intensify, even as diplomats attempt to slow it. Still, the fact that Israeli and Lebanese envoys are now meeting face-to-face in an American-brokered setting underscores how deeply the war has altered the calculations of all sides. The United States is pressing for a framework that would restore a ceasefire and move toward longer-term arrangements, while making clear it wants agreements made between governments, not through separate armed tracks. For now, the war continues in parallel with talks. In southern Lebanon, clashes around Bint Jbeil remain fierce, with Israeli forces pushing forward and Hezbollah responding with rockets and artillery. In Israel's north, sirens and warnings keep communities braced for more. In Gaza, the Israeli military is still confronting deadly uncertainty on the ground. And at the United Nations, officials continue to warn that the space for diplomacy may be shrinking as the conflict's humanitarian and security costs rise by the day.